Another of Joe Hill's vampire tales is making its way to the screen, this time being his unique take on the world of Bram Stoker's Dracula with Abraham's Boys, a Dracula story. Hill, the son of horror master Stephen King and an iconic writer in his own right, has had a few of his works adapted for the screen thus far, most notably fellow vampire story numbers for A2, which ran for 2 seasons on AMC, Lock and Key, which ran for 3 seasons on Netflix after 2 prior failed adaptations, and The Black Phone, among others. Abraham's Boys, a Dracula story, whose short story was first published in The Many Faces of Van Helsing, serves as a sequel to Bram Stoker's classic novel. Set in 1915 California, the story centers on Abraham Van Helsing having built a family after killing the iconic Count, though as he attempts to teach his sons about the dangers of vampires, doubt begins to creep in with one of them about their whole lives. Bosch alum Titus Welliver leads the Abraham's Boys cast alongside Jocelyn Donahue as Mina Van Helsing, Brady Hepner as their eldest son Max and Judah Mackey as their younger son Rudy. Ahead of the movie's release, Screen Rant interviewed Joe Hill to discuss Abraham's Boys, a Dracula story. The author-executive producer opened up about his unique take on Stoker's characters and his interpretation of whether Abraham and Mina had actually encountered vampires in the past, or were going through some kind of delusion, as well as why he let writer-director Natasha Kermany run with her vision for the story and his appreciation for the cast of the film. He also shared his enthusiasm for the Black Phone 2 script and the secret sequel setup in the first film. Abraham's Boys is something of an Elseworld adaptation of Van Helsing. It kind of sounds like the way Ted Bundy spent his weekends. While there have been a variety of adaptations of Stoker's Dracula over the years, Hill's original short story is a rarity in how it explores the aftermath of it, particularly since it puts the focus on Van Helsing. In reflecting on the inception of Abraham's Boys, the author-executive producer explained that one of the biggest hooks for him with the story was the general idea that Van Helsing is a man who goes out on Friday night to a graveyard, tears open the coffin of someone recently deceased, finds a young lady sleeping there, and then uses a mallet to slam a stake through her heart. Complete with chopping off said victim's head and jamming a bulb of garlic into her screaming mouth, Hill humorously points out, it kind of sounds like the way Ted Bundy spent his weekends, even if is ultimately seen as heroic, because vampires are evil. From there, the author found his way into the Elseworld story of the character, feeling it was an element that I can explore profitably, creatively speaking, and expressing that it all worked out in the end with the film adaptation. The story aged like fine wine, and now we're finally ready to decant it and share it with everyone, Hill expressed. Given Abraham's Boys poses the question of whether Abraham's vampire beliefs are real or not, it's fair to wonder whether Hill lands on one side or the other of the discussion, and the author himself is pretty open to letting readers and viewers come away with their own interpretation. Acknowledging that he's perfectly content to just play it straight with Stoker's good versus evil battle in the original Dracula, he also admits to having a unique relationship with the character as, well before he read the classic book, he got kind of screwed up when I was a kid and actually read Fred Saberhagen's The Dracula tape before. The 1975 novel served as a reimagining of Stoker's novel, being told through a series of home recordings that had been discovered in an abandoned car in a snow drift and being Dracula narrating his life story, particularly the events of Stoker's book. As Hill explains, the book's exploration of the original events makes it clear Abraham Van Helsing is a psychotic, with those working with him to stop the Count instead feeling like members of a cult rather than a group of fellow heroes. Hill entrusted Natasha Kermany to bring her own vision to the story. She's not there competing with modern films. Titus Welliver's Abraham Van Helsing looking cautiously through his front door in Abraham's Boys, a Dracula story. Though having been involved with the writing of the pilot for Netflix's Lock and Key adaptation, Joe Hill has largely left the adaptation of his works to those leading the charge on said properties, which did extend to Natasha Kermany for Abraham's Boys. With the film taking a few deviations from his source material, including Mina being alive and part of the story, Hill shares that there wasn't much of a conversation ahead of time between him and Kermany about what should be in the film, describing he doesn't generally take a prescriptive attitude towards any of the adaptations. The author goes on to express that he feels like I had my turn at this story in his short stories and books, and rather than restrict other creatives to what they can do with the material, he's instead kind of curious what they're going to bring to the party. Hill was further wowed by the job Kermany did with translating Abraham's Boys to the screen, describing there being a suffocating air of suspense to the film and comparing it to some of the best mid-century Hitchcock movies, including Psycho and Vertigo. He also points out that, in her desire to play her own game, Kermany also brings a John Ford Western feel to the film, describing such sights as Brady Hepner outside with a hatchet and the sun is setting over a dusty California hill country. The author EP goes on to praise her approach as being timeless and could sit comfortably with, in a way, much older films. It feels like you're getting a story, a vision of immigrants in the American West, a sort of classic fable of the new settlers, Hill expressed. And I think that's powerful, too. Hill was amazed by Jocelyn Donohue's work on the film. Bringing Mina into it was a great idea. As previously mentioned, one of the biggest changes from the short story was including Mina in the film, with the last stop in Yuma County's Jocelyn Donohue playing the iconic Dracula character. To start, Hill was thrilled with Donohue's work in the role, calling her extraordinary as Mina, while also praising Kermany for having made all the right moves, both in adapting his story and building the great cast of Abraham's Boys. Hill goes on to point out the importance of the movie expanding Mina's role from the story, in which she was out of the picture for 10 years, as it now makes her the emotional heart of that family. She's where Max gets his sense of empathy, and his curiosity, and some of his courage, and some of his willingness to challenge the world around him, the author explained. As such, with Abraham's Boys also showing Mina slipping away psychologically, as she still appears to be drawn to the apparently dead Count, and dealing with an unclear physical illness, Hill finds that it adds a terrifying undercurrent to the movie's story. We sense she's losing her mind, and we feel intensely that she's under threat, that she is facing mortal peril from forces unknown, Hill shared.